Welcome to the Football Film Room Show. I'm Nick Kehoe, and we've got another great episode for you today. And actually, now that I think about it, I can't really guarantee that to you. Because today, we have to talk about the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation. I know. It's the last thing you want to hear about. Believe me, it's the last thing I want to talk about. But I think we have to do it because there's really not a whole lot of other news going on around the NFL other than off-the-field news. So let's talk about the Browns because a report came out last week that coming out of minicamp, Deshaun Watson had emerged as the favorite to be QB1 for the Browns. Now, as you know, that quarterback situation with the Browns has been shaky, to say the least, over the last several years. Deshaun Watson, veteran, is one of the options. Then, of course, you have Shedeur Sanders, who sounds like he got some first-team reps as well during minicamp. And then you have fellow second-year quarterback Dillon Gabriel, who got about 6 starts last year and didn't play particularly well. Doesn't really seem to be a threat. But either way, it's those three quarterbacks. And head coach Todd Monken, he didn't say that there was a number one quarterback or a favorite or anything along those lines. He did say he would love to be able to name a QB1 heading into training camp. But he couldn't make any sort of guarantees or any promises or any decisions, really, because they've been on the field for 3 practices. But this really seems to be a 2-horse race between Watson and Sanders. But the real question is, why would Deshaun Watson really truly be an option? Yes, he's a veteran, and Monken is installing a brand new offense, so he wants someone who's seen more on the field, who's familiar with more terminology, more play types, etc. But it's not like the Browns are on the verge of a Super Bowl here and they need a win-now veteran. They're in a gap year when it comes to the quarterback position. They didn't make any big moves this offseason to go out and get anyone. Seems like they are building up the team around the quarterback position. I thought they did a really nice job in the draft, as I said last week, of drafting offensive linemen, drafting receivers, putting whoever is going to play quarterback in position to succeed. And, of course, Todd Monken, his system, I really am a fan of what he does. Did some really imaginative stuff in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson. So I think whoever plays quarterback long-term, they could be in a decent spot here in Cleveland. But I think right now, this 2026 season, it's clearly a gap year. So with that being said, whoever plays quarterback this year is very likely not going to be the quarterback in 2027 and beyond. So if we're looking at Deshaun Watson and Shedeur Sanders as the 2 frontrunners, let's take a look and really think about why the Browns should go with one or the other. Deshaun Watson, yes, he's a veteran. And a long, long time ago, he was a really good quarterback. A lot of people forget that 2020, he was on the verge of being an elite quarterback. He wasn't quite Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, but he was sort of that next level down and growing every single year because he was a really physically talented quarterback, both as a runner and a thrower, but he was year by year getting better at the nuances of the position, at the processing, making decisions, reading coverage. In that 2020 season, even though the Texans had a bad year, he completed 70% of his passes for over 4,800 yards. This was in a 16-game season, by the way. 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 112.4 passer rating. And he also added 444 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. But that's kind of where his good football ended because then he had the holdout and the suspension and the trade to Cleveland. And over the last 5 years, he's played 19 games. 19 games. Barely more than one season over the course of a 5-year span. And when he did play, it wasn't just that his physical ability seemed diminished. Because he took so much time off, because he missed that 2021 season and then most of the 2022 season serving a suspension, when he got back on the field, he wasn't just rusty. He was slower to process. Because that skill for a quarterback to process coverage, to react, to make decisions quickly, if you're not doing that for nearly 2 years, you're not going to be quite as good. You're going to become slower at that skill. Now, it doesn't mean you can't build that skill back up, but to do that, you have to play a lot of football. But Watson didn't really do that for a number of reasons, mostly because of injury. 2023, he came back, played 6 games, then had a fractured throwing shoulder, was done for the year. Then he came back in 2024, played 7 games, ruptured his Achilles, and now hasn't played since. So just 19 games in 5 seasons. Physical abilities had already diminished pre-injury, But he also suffered some pretty significant injuries to his throwing shoulder and his Achilles. His right arm and his legs, that was what made him good. And the processing, the mental side of the game, he was starting to get good at that, but then lost it because he didn't play at all. So what does Deshaun Watson offer you at this point? Who cares if he's a veteran that has seen more football and can potentially learn your offense quicker? He's not going to be your quarterback in 2027. And you can argue he's not going to even help you win now. What does success look like for Deshaun Watson? Let's say he's the starter this year and starts 17 games for the first time since 2020, or starts a full season for the first time since 2020. Even if he exceeds all expectations, what type of season would he have? Would he be sort of a fringe top half of the league quarterback? So what? Todd Monken, it's your first year. It's your first year as the head coach. You get to set your culture. You can probably mold a younger quarterback, even if he's not going to be here for the future. You can probably mold a younger quarterback better than you can mold a 31-year-old quarterback, which is what Watson's going to be this year. And you can establish your culture around that. So I don't get it. I don't get the benefit of making Watson your quarterback at all. And I want to be clear. I'm not exactly a Shedeur Sanders truther over here, okay? I'm not a big fan of him as a quarterback. I wasn't a huge fan of him coming out of college. I'm not one of these people who thinks that he dropped in the draft because there was a grand conspiracy against him. No, he dropped in the draft because he was a second or third round talent, and that was not enough to justify everything that came with him off the field, good and bad. And I'm not even saying all the stuff off the field is necessarily his fault. Some of it is. Some of it's just the attention that comes with him. He can't control all of that, but the juice is just not worth the squeeze for his level of talent. But to me, if you're the Browns, don't you want to give him a chance this year? You didn't go out and make any moves for a quarterback. He's not standing in the way of anyone else that you're grooming or anything along those lines. This isn't a win-now year for Todd Monken where his butt's on the line and he absolutely needs to win, otherwise he's going to be out the door. This is a year for the Browns to see what they have in their young quarterback, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You got that 2027 class that you're targeting anyway. But you would like to know if he's potentially the guy. I mean, I'll get into the type of season that Shedeur Sanders had in a little bit, but what if he makes a big leap this year? We've seen quarterbacks do that from year 1 to year 2, obviously. What if he makes a big leap? What if he is your guy? What if he is your quarterback of the future, your franchise quarterback? Even though I don't think that's going to happen, why not take a look and see? You would rather have your quarterback, your franchise quarterback this year, than have to wait to the 2027 class, and then whatever rookie you take there, it's going to take him a little while to develop. Probably not going to be realistically competing till 2028, unless that quarterback has an unbelievable rookie season. So why not go with Shedeur? Why not give him every opportunity to win the job? At very least, you build up some sort of value in him. Maybe you find out he can be a decent backup quarterback for you. Or maybe he does well enough that some other team might want to take a chance on him and you can trade him and get something in return. Not saying that stuff will definitely happen, but no harm, no foul in trying, right? Now let's get to Shedeur's 7 starts last year and talk about how he performed. His numbers were not very good at all, right? He completed just 56.6% of his passes, 6.6 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 68.1 passer rating. It was, truth be told, it was ugly, folks. I know the Browns went 3-4, and some people were making the argument that he energized the team. I don't know about all that. How did he play the quarterback position? Not very well. He was Jameis Winston without the upside. And you look at the way he plays, he played the same way in college. He behaves on the field as if he's Josh Allen without Josh Allen's talent, right? He abandons plays early. He runs around. He tries to make things happen with his legs. He tries to scramble, make off-schedule throws. And look, he's got some ability to do that. It's not special ability. You can't live that way. No quarterback can live that way. You have to be able to play with timing and rhythm, but there are some quarterbacks who can get away with doing it more than others. Shedeur Sanders is not that type of quarterback. However, he plays that way. And that's one of the big issues. That's why he takes a lot of sacks. He makes a lot of bad mistakes, these YOLO, you only live once, throw the ball up, see what happens plays. You can't do that in the NFL unless you are supremely gifted, and he is not. Now, he's got decent physical talent. I think he's a good deep ball thrower, and as I said, he can make some plays as a scrambler. I think he's got good vision when he gets to the perimeter. He's got good evasiveness, can get away from defenders. Now, he's not necessarily going to make him pay by running for 20 yards every time he breaks the pocket like a Drake May might. But he's got some ability, like I said. The biggest issue with him, though, is that he's too slow in everything he does. I said this about him coming out of college, but he is too slow in the way he processes. He's too slow in the way he drops back and sets up. He doesn't play with enough urgency in the pocket. And that leads to him being late on throws, missing open windows. He stares down receivers. There are a bunch of plays where you can see defenders keying on him and seeing him look at a receiver and then start his long, deliberate throwing motion, and they're able to just drive on that receiver and either make a play, knock the ball away, or tackle the receiver immediately. So there are a bunch of issues with just the way he plays on a down-to-down basis. Because for him to succeed in the NFL, he has to play with timing and rhythm. He has to be able to hit his back foot, get the ball out, keep the offense on schedule. He doesn't do that. Doesn't seem to attempt to do that. Struggled against the blitz. Didn't seem to recognize blitzes. Didn't seem to recognize when he had to throw hot, when he didn't. Again, tried to lean on that ability to run around and evade defenders, but when you've got a free rusher coming in and he's got a 10-yard head start on you, you're not going to outrun him. But there were just too many plays where he wasn't aware. Arguably the biggest issue he had, though, was with game management and decision-making. As I said earlier, he took a lot of sacks when he didn't need to. But there were just too many times when he didn't do the thing that was going to be the best for the Browns offense and the best for winning that particular game. Right? He'd be on the verge of field goal range, for instance, and instead of taking an underneath throw that's there on 3rd and long, he'd try to run around, avoid pressure, and end up taking a sack to knock the Browns out of field goal range. That's just one example. There were games where Cleveland was winning in the second half, and he would, again, make those throws I was talking about earlier, those you only live once throws where he's just tossing the ball up. Ended up leading to an interception against the Titans. The Titans would go on to take the lead coming off that interception and kind of run away with the game. There was another terrible throw he had against the Steelers. Luckily, it didn't come back to bite them. They ended up beating the Steelers, but this was another one of those throws he made off his back foot, just threw it in the air. End of their game against the Bills, they were down 23-20 with about 2.5 minutes remaining. One of those situations where you got to keep moving forward. You hear Joe Montana talk about it. You got to keep picking up yards, keep the offense moving forward. That's kind of the secret to the 2-minute drill. Well, the Bills brought a blitz on a first down. Shedeur did not see it. Had he recognized the blitz, had he been looking for the blitz, which he should have been aware of in that situation, he would have seen a receiver for a little 4-yard out. Instead, he didn't throw it. Ran around, ended up taking a sack. Now it's 2nd and 18. The very next play, before the 2-minute warning, a similar thing happened. He held onto the ball, was looking for the home run downfield instead of dumping the ball off underneath and getting some of those yards that he had just lost back, making 3rd down more manageable. He didn't do it. Locked onto his receivers downfield for too long. The pressure eventually got there. He ended up taking an intentional grounding, and now it's 3rd and 32 from his own end zone pretty much. Good luck. The Browns would have to punt the ball away. They couldn't even go for it in 4th down. And that ended up being all she wrote. Browns ended up losing that game 23-20. Now, everything I just described to you, terrible quarterback play, terrible decision-making, terrible game management. Even with all that, the Browns should give Shedeur Sanders every opportunity to be the starter this year. Either Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel. Gabriel, if you remember, was also drafted last year. He was ahead of Sanders on the depth chart and actually got 6 starts before Sanders did. And Gabriel, he plays the way that Shedeur needs to, right? He actually plays with good timing, good rhythm, throws with anticipation, can fit balls into tight windows, is a pretty accurate passer. But his problem is that he's limited. He's limited physically, can't really push the ball downfield. Last year, if you look at his numbers, they were actually somewhat okay. He had a 7-2 TD to INT ratio. Had a 59.5 completion percentage, which, again, is not great, but it's better than Shedeur Sanders. Problem was, his passing yards per attempt were 5.1. That is brutally low. And one of the big reasons for that is that he couldn't push the ball downfield. Not a lot of big playability. Had just 8 pass attempts in 6 starts and 2 completions on throws 20 yards or more downfield. So Gabriel is a guy that he needs the play to work for him to succeed. And if it does, he can play with timing and rhythm. He can keep an offense on schedule. But he's limited in his ability to expand the offense. He's limited in his ability to make big plays, either within the structure of the offense or second reaction plays. So at this point, it seems like it makes more sense to play a guy like Shedeur. Like I said, he does have a little bit more of that big play ability at very least. But I'd be happy with Dillon Gabriel being the quarterback this year if I was the Browns instead of Deshaun Watson. My basic point is that there's no reason to play Watson. There's no reason that the Browns should be looking for him to be QB1. Absolutely no benefit. The only way it would make sense for Watson is if the quarterback competition is just Watson is so far ahead of Shedeur and Gabriel and actually looks like 2020 Watson, which I doubt is the case. I'm not there at practice, so I couldn't actually tell you. But short of that, short of us getting the 2020 near MVP caliber quarterback in Deshaun Watson, there is no reason for the Browns to even give him a legitimate shot. There is no reason for the Browns not to stack the deck against him, not to have him start at the bottom of the depth chart and say, you better blow both these quarterbacks out of the water to have any chance of getting on the field. It needs to be a complete no-brainer decision that you are far and away so much better than these two quarterbacks for you to become the starter. But who knows? Every organization has their reasons. Every head coach has their reasons. Maybe Monken really wants to get off to a good first year and doesn't want to have to deal with a young quarterback's growing pains. But again, I'll say what I said earlier. I don't know that Watson gives you that much of an advantage over these other two quarterbacks because this is not 2020. All right, that's it for today's show. Thank you all for listening. As always, please be sure to like and subscribe on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you listen to this podcast. Check out footballfilmroom.com. Got a lot of great breakdowns on there. Got a lot of all 22 cut-ups. Going to have a Shedeur Sanders breakdown up there later this week to illustrate what I was talking about in this podcast. But that's all I've got for you today, and I'll talk to you next time.